Well, hi there and welcome. It is Jonathan Foust, and this is a webcast, and you are you. I'm really glad to have this time with you. I'm feeling incrementally better from my COVID walking pneumonia experience. This experience may be punctuated from time to time with some wake-up bell coughing experiences for you. I'll do my best, excuse me, to mute myself. At any rate, I have a talk which I've been thinking about for a long time that I'm going to be sharing with you after this meditation and the announcements. First of all, thank you to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for hosting this, to our producer, Glenn Harrison, that gets this out to you. Big thank you to Rita Moran, our mindful movement teacher. The full Monday night experience starts at 6:30 with Rita, doing mindful movement to bring you up to the meditation and then to the talk. So please feel free to avail yourself of this. The link for mindful movement is on my Facebook page and on my website. Also, just to say, I've got a newsletter that I send out weekly if you're interested, but then I have one which used to be monthly, but I've fallen so far behind. I'm going to get it out in the next week or two. It's got a compendium of all the talks, all my best photography for the last many months. So feel free to sign up there if you're interested. Also, just to say, this is all offered freely. It's all offered in the tradition that no one's denied access to these practices and these teachings. And in that spirit, if you feel like supporting this, thank you so much. It really does help keep the wheels on the bus. And finally, shameless promotion, I am doing a day-long retreat in January. It's called The Most Important Thing, which is an inquiry into, you guessed it, the most important thing, what really calls you in your life in the year ahead. So it's an annual retreat that I really love offering. So we've got a talk ahead exploring how to navigate turbulent times. I don't know about you, but I'm anticipating some turbulent times ahead. And part of it is around cultivating present moment awareness. So this will be the theme of our talk, of our meditation, sorry. I advise you, as just suggestion, to not get walking pneumonia. It's something I'd had before, and I forgot just how hard it is to get your lungs back. So as you're ready, please feel free to stretch and move. And move in any way that your body would like to. It's always nice to kind of get the wiggles out. And as you're ready, you can find your way into a comfortable position for meditation. And then take some time. And very consciously, you might take a moment just to look around the space you're in. Just find 5 objects that you can name. Just see it and then name it. Sense where you are in the sense of place. Take a moment to reflect on 4 things you can feel. Maybe it's the temperature of the air against your skin, the points of contact between your body and a chair and cushion or sofa or bed. Maybe it's a particular sensation you feel on the inside, pleasant or unpleasant. Think of 3 things you can hear. Just identify 3 things you can hear right now. Just the experience of here and now. And if you haven't already, now you might close your eyes. Let your attention shift from awareness of the inner world to a heightened sense of what's happening on more subtle levels inside. This breath, any sense of tingling, pulse, vibration. And you might explore as a way of entering into your meditation what it's like to soften on the inside. Softening from the inside out the muscles of your face, letting all expression just melt away. And softening the forehead. Can you feel or imagine your forehead smooth? And the inside of the mouth, the tongue, the lips. What could soften right now? And can you feel the entirety of your arms, the shoulders, shoulder blades, down through the elbows, down through the wrists? Feel the weight of the arms, the volume of the hands. Could you relax from the inside out? Could you soften just a little bit more? Feel the space between your navel and your spine, sensing the lower belly, the abdomen. As you feel the breath here, is it possible to soften or relax? Is it possible to soften or relax just a little bit more? And feeling now the hip joints, the floor of the pelvis, and the buttocks, sensing from the inside out. What could relax? And what could relax even more? And feeling now from the center of the bones, the length of the legs, down through the knees and down through the ankles, the volume of the feet, the soles of the feet and the heels, the toes, sensing from the inside. And again, what could soften or relax? What could soften or relax even more? Can you open your attention now to the whole body? The crown of the head, down through the soles of the feet, sensing the space around the body, the space inside the body. What could soften or relax right now? And what could soften or relax even more? Investigating now the experience of the breath on the inside. Where do you feel the breath the most predominant? And notice what happens if you relax around the sensation of the breath. What could soften? how much more intimately can you feel? Notice the sound vibrations. And could you possibly soften into this sense of experiencing the sound vibrations as they're happening? Perhaps softening even more. And for these next few minutes, you might direct your attention to the breath or to the sound vibrations, or perhaps to anywhere in the felt sense of the body. And let your attention be on this quality of present moment awareness, the experience of the breath or sound or felt sense. The mind, of course, will come in with commentary and wander. Just gently notice when the mind has wandered away, and notice how compassionately you can guide your attention back to this breath and to these sounds and to this felt sense. And what do you notice now? What's happening right now? How intimately can you experience this point of contact with breath or sound or feeling? In these remaining minutes, you might like to explore the following. Can you sense or imagine what it means for you to take the seat of the witness? This quality of non-judging awareness. And you might broaden your awareness beyond the breath or sound or feeling to notice anything and everything that changes, and to sense what it means to let things be. To be aware of the flow and allow the flow to move and shift all by itself, relaxed and alert. And gently now deepening your breath. Let all technique fall away. Sense what may have shifted for you. Let your body move and stretch in any way that feels good for you, taking all the time you need for your transition. and welcome back. My apologies in advance for my spontaneous coughing. I'm still recovering my lungs. Way back when I first moved into a spiritual community as a full-time resident, as a junior varsity monk, I was in for a little bit of a culture shock, to say the least. I came from a culture that said, I remember distinctly in elementary school, one of the teachers saying, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Which meant we didn't really say a lot. The community I grew up in was just a little bit repressed. And the community I moved into, this ashram, was, I'd say, dedicated to full expression of whatever anyone was feeling at any given moment. I was overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed at how articulate people were in describing their inner world of feelings, hurts, unmet needs, requests for attention. It kind of blew my mind. And it was overwhelming, for sure. And in one area I worked in, where I did my volunteer work, there was someone who was particularly articulate and who was also really comfortable stopping a meeting to process an emotion or a reaction to something. And I was really caught. I was very, very new. On the one hand, I was amazed to see someone who was willing to kind of stop a group of people to work through some issue that this person was having. On the other hand, I really felt for the head of our department who had stuff to get done. Plus, I wanted to get stuff done. So at times I was resentful, having to stop and listen and process and so forth. But on the other hand, I learned a lot as to just the language around feeling and emotion, and again, the hurts and unmet needs and requests for attention and so forth. But a lot of times I was feeling pretty resistant. But nonetheless, in our community, we had this whole theory called the wave theory, where emotions kind of rise like waves. And part of the practice is to stay on the wave, to ride the wave to its crescendo. And then on the other side of the wave is sometimes a sense of release or insight. And there's a lot to that. Generally, what happens is when you feel a strong emotion, the tension begins to build, and usually you want to get off the wave. And one of the ways I see getting off that wave of emotion or resistance to life is through the obstacles or the hindrances. Either we spill off into fantasy or planning, or we jump off the wave by getting caught in anger, aversion, ill will, judgment, or we get off the wave by getting hypervigilant and anxious and worried and all those mental formations, or we get off the wave by numbing ourselves, or we get off the wave by being overwhelmed by doubt and self-criticism. That's how we get off the wave. But if we can stay on the wave, sometimes on the other side, when the emotion subsides, it'll either feel like a weather system moved through, or sometimes there's an insight. You kind of realize what it is you were hanging on to that you're no longer hanging on to. So whenever we'd be in the middle of a meeting and someone would raise their hand and I've got something I need to process, I worked out a little deal with another person in the department where I would just say, "Surf's up." And that phrase has been really, really helpful for me, particularly when I'm with someone who's experiencing strong emotion or anger or something like that. I just simply say, "Surf's up. Here's the wave. Can I stay on the wave?" I sort of imagine myself on a surfboard and explore what it's like to feel the rising and everything it takes to stay on the wave, and then watching the wave dissipate. I share this because it's been a helpful metaphor for me, but also I've really been reflecting on what it's like right now in the culture, with the change in administrations and so forth. There's no lack of opportunity to surf waves. From what I can tell in talking with people, there's a tremendous amount of fear and anxiety around what might occur in these next couple of years. So I wanted to share with you what I think are some helpful strategies, some actual practices that can help you and help all of us when you hit turbulence, when you hit some strong waves. The first is a strategy for taking refuge in the present moment. The second is a strategy for observing thoughts and emotions and interrupting the reactivity that naturally occurs. So it's a strategy for sort of breaking the reactivity. The third is a strategy or practice for cultivating steadiness. And the fourth, if we have time, I'm not sure how long I'll need, might be a part 2, are some specific practices for cultivating compassion, not only for yourself, but for others who are going through a hard time. So I'd like to explore some of these strategies in a way that's, I think, very pragmatic, the ways that you can really apply it. When I was 13, my entire family decided to go to the National Boundary Waters canoe area in Minnesota. And a lot of my family were kind of wilderness canoe type people. So we did 10 days unsupported. So we brought all of our food, everything we needed for 10 days. And I was 13 at the time. And we took off, had a couple of really, really nice days, and then it was days and days of rain. And the kind of rain that's heavy rain, light rain, fog, constant moisture. So inevitably, everything got soaked. We had canvas tents back in those days. If you ever worked with canvas tents, they're awful. Sleeping bags got wet. We cooked with wood, so the wood was wet. I was at that time, 13. I was 6'5" and maybe 140 pounds, maybe 145 pounds. No meat on my body whatsoever. And I remember so distinctly standing there in the wind, just trying not to move. You know what it's like if you wear jeans and they're cold and wet, and what it's like against your skin. And I remember saying to my father, who was trying to get a fire started with wet wood, I said to him, if I had an anvil, I would tie it around my neck and I'd throw it in that lake. Now, I think about my dad. My dad was a Quaker. He was an English professor. He was a lover of Keats and the Romantics. He could just spiel off Shakespeare's soliloquies. He also served in World War II as a private first class. He was wounded the first time in Anzio, Italy, by shrapnel. He was wounded again on the Rhine River on the border of Germany as part of the main ground invasion. At 2 a.m., 25 guys in his boat took off with no life preservers and no instruction other than get to the other side and keep going. Only he and possibly one other guy survived when they took a direct mortar hit. They pulled him out of the river many, many miles downstream. He had collected helmets, had turned them upside down, and was hanging on to them. And then after they patched him up again, he was posted at Buchenwald after it was liberated. And also during those years that he was in, his unit was twice decorated for the most sustained days of combat without reinforcement. So he'd seen some stuff. All this to say is that day with the fog and the rain and the cold, the light fading as he's trying to get a fire going, he gave me a look I'd never seen before. It was a steely-eyed look where it seemed like he was just looking through me. It wasn't angry, it wasn't bitter. It was a little cold. And I imagined him taking in the sight of this skinny, whining 13-year-old. And he said, "Hey, no one's shooting at us." There was kind of a transmission in that communication. He had never spoken about the war before. And he didn't speak about the war for like another 15 years when the dam finally burst. But I got something in that transmission. It's kind of broke my spell of misery. And I became more present. And when I really thought, yeah, no one's shooting at us, this is pretty nice. Present moment awareness is a really interesting refuge. And for me, it took that to sort of snap me out of it. No one's shooting at us. It could be worse. Or as a friend says, every day above ground is a good day. So first of all, there's something here about the attitude in the mind that's always helpful to look at. But there's also something about the specificity of what does it mean to be present? Because when we're caught in turbulence, quite often we become future-oriented or past-oriented. This isn't good, I want something better in the future. Or this isn't good, I want something that happened in the past. That's not here right now. So I'd like to look specifically at some techniques that can be very helpful for bringing you into present moment awareness. So if you like, you can close your eyes. If it's not possible to close your eyes, you can just sort of sense this. This will be just for a minute or two. One of the most direct ways we can cultivate present moment awareness is by controlling breath. Controlling breath is not only a way to concentrate the mind by focusing and paying attention, but you're actually changing your physiology when you focus on the breath. Also, you'll notice that if you exhale longer than you inhale, it has a tendency to bring in calming. If you extend the inhalation longer than the exhalation, it has a tendency to sort of enliven. So just for the next minute, this will be brief, and we're going to explore a few more things. You can close your eyes, and if you would inhale to the count of 4, 2, 3, 4, hold for the count of 4, 2, 3, 4, and now exhale 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll do another round. Inhale 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4, 2, 3, 4. Exhale for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One more. Inhale 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4, 2, 3, 4. Exhale for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now just relax. Relax the breath. And what do you feel? What do you notice just from 3 rounds of breath? You may sense how, to some degree, how this might calm your nervous system a little bit. And now just gliding into another technique. Take a moment and explore if you can feel 5 different sensations. It might be the feet, the palms, sensation. 5 different sensations. can you identify 3 distinct and separate sounds? And just notice how, as you clarify the distinction of something you feel and something you hear, it will entrain your attention into more present moment awareness. And finally, the classic instruction offered by Thich Nhat Hanh, just exploring what happens when you just sense these words. As I breathe in, I'm aware of breathing in. As I breathe out, I'm aware of breathing out. In these final moments, just sense the quality of presence. Anything that may have shifted. Then if you like, you can open your eyes or you can remain with them closed. Why are these simple things so helpful? To consciously inhale and hold and exhale. To specify what you feel. To specify what you hear. It can break the chain of reactivity because the mind just builds on itself. One line builds on the next one. The classic term is called papancha in Pali. It's the proliferation of thought. So when you come in with a present moment sensation and bring that to the foreground, you break the chain of reactivity. As Ram Dass famously said, be here now. And there's something so magic about actually being here now. So the question is, are you here right now? Are you aware of this breath as you inhale? Are you aware of the sound vibrations? Can you make room for it? The mind has this way of anticipating the worst. As Mark Twain said, the worst things in my life never actually happened. Certainly true for me. And the question becomes, is it possible to train your mind to come and rest in the here and now, in the sensations of here and now, just a little bit more? So this is one refuge. Be here now. Connect to the sensations. Connect to the body. It's the first foundation of awareness. Awareness of the body. Awareness of sensation. Another refuge is to explore what it means to take the seat of the observer, or to take the seat of the witness. And I find this fascinating. When we explore what it means to meditate, you begin to recognize that you might, maybe not, but you may have some control over what you pay attention to. And listening to music is a fascinating practice. I love this whole idea of what's called bare attention, which is listening to what's happening without adding a story to it. Just the bare attention to the sound vibrations. I have a real aversion to pop background music, elevator music, the stuff you hear when you're in a store, or even popular music that is played over and over and over again. Particularly stuff from like high school, that kind of pop music. It's really hard just to hear it as if I'm hearing it for the first time, because there's so many associations to it, and we get overexposed to that stuff. I do enjoy from time to time listening to classical music, and particularly because it brings up this this sense of how I can be selective in my listening. With the whole orchestra playing, I can just focus on the piccolo, for example. Just pull one note out. Or I'm sorry, one instrument out. Or maybe I can add to it. I can listen to the relationship between the piccolo and the percussion. Or I can widen my awareness and take in the totality of the sound coming from the full orchestra, just the fullness of sound. And when I open to the fullness of the sound, then I can start to identify the patterns, the repeating patterns, the play on patterns, the kind of riff that goes on. There's an element of music and an element of meditation that is extrinsic. That is to say, it's externally focused. You're focusing outward on the sounds, or you're focusing outward on place, outwardly on the outer sensations. And then there's the intrinsic awareness that occurs, which is what's happening internally. It's the subtlety of sensation. It's the play of unpleasant and pleasant and neutral sensations. It's this whole alive world inside of how the extrinsic affects the intrinsic, how the outside stuff affects the inside stuff, the instinctive pushing away and grasping. But behind all of this, behind the external and the internal, is what some call taking the seat of the witness. It's what it is that's aware element of things. The sense of the observer, if you will, has these qualities. It's neither for nor against anything. It's simply awake and noticing. It's like an eye that doesn't blink. Non-judging awareness. And taking the seat of the witness can be a doorway to transformation. In the most pragmatic way, it's the difference between saying, I am anxious, and I am aware of anxiety. That's a big difference. I'm pissed, and I'm aware of being pissed. There's that sense of disidentification, which doesn't mean necessarily that you are bypassing. It actually opens it up for deeper investigation. So a little practice here on taking the seat of the witness. If you like, you can close your eyes, or if you can't, find a way to do this. And imagine yourself sitting on the edge of a riverbank. And imagine yourself sitting on the edge of this river and just simply noticing the flow of the river. Now, there are a couple qualities about the river. One is continuous. It's a flow. The second quality is that what floats down the river is completely beyond your control. It's simply happening. And imagine that as you're just sitting and watching, a canoe goes by, 3 ducks make their way, a tree branch floats by, a fish surfaces. Can you imagine yourself as the observer of the river? The observer of flow. Now, as you sense what's flowing, this metaphor of the river, one of the streams of flow is the stream of of all the senses. The movement of the breath on the inside, the texture of the air against your skin, the stream of sound, of visuals, taste and smell. This is one of the streams. Another element of this flow, another element of this stream, is the stream of thoughts, the commentary. Can you imagine yourself as the observer of the thoughts themselves? Yet another element of the flow is the flow of feeling, of mood, of emotion. Sadness, anxiety, tightening, expansion. And yet another element of flow is the shifting states of consciousness. And just for the next few moments, can you imagine who you are taking the seat of the witness to everything that is changing? You are not the sensations. You are the awareness of sensations. You are not just the thoughts. You are the awareness of thoughts, the awareness of emotion, the awareness of mood, the awareness of states. You are the witness. If you like, you might deepen your breath. If you like, you can open your eyes. Or not. This sense of the witness can be incredibly powerful. That sense of just a little bit of disidentification. And there are lots of techniques that can help you cultivate that. One is a sense of what we call labeling or noting. Just to say, I am feeling sad. I am noticing agitation. Or one of my favorite ways is simply to say, for example, anxiety is happening. Sadness is happening. Planning is happening. That little bit of disidentification can be very, very helpful. And when you can take the seat of the witness more, and again, it comes with practice, you can sort of notice the qualities of mind. This is the byproduct of your meditation practice as you become more aware of the play of certain mind states. You become aware of the nature of desire, wanting your experience to be different, and moving into planning, fantasy. You notice the qualities of aversion, anger, judgment, ill will. You notice the patterns of worry and hypervigilance, anxiety. You notice the mind state of wanting to numb, wanting to go to sleep, the mind state of doubt. These become more clear in your experience. And the more you take the seat of the witness, the more you begin to recognize, oh, this is desire. And just in that naming, there can be a little bit of release. Sometimes a lot of release. Sometimes just a little bit. Sometimes in our lives, when something comes up, we want to repress it. We want to suppress it. And sometimes just naming it is exactly what can help cultivate a shift. As they say in some traditions, some experiences are self-liberating. That is to say, all they require is to be named. Sometimes, of course, when you identify something that's between you and feeling truly free, it may require some deeper investigation, and we'll talk about that more. But what you can't communicate controls you. What you are not aware of controls you. And the corollary to that is what you are aware of has the possibility of freeing you. So a meditation practice can help you develop the witness. The more you take the seat of the witness or the observer, the more you begin to observe from an impartial point of view, the more you'll notice your top 10, like the top 10 stories that just repeat themselves again and again and again. You'll notice the repeating patterns in your life, the unconscious stimulus response that goes on inside. And maybe most importantly, you'll notice that you are not your thoughts. You are not your thoughts, that you are the one who's listening. What a difference that makes. What a difference. The more you can cultivate this sense of the witness, this sense of non-judging awareness, the more it sets you up for cultivating more steadiness in your life, more of a sense of really having your keel in the water. What I've certainly noticed in my experience is that my brain, and chances are your brain as well, is a reaction machine. It's a storytelling machine. This week, Thanksgiving week, I was at Whole Foods shopping and I saw a vegan pumpkin pie at the grocery store and I immediately grabbed it. I think I grabbed it so fast because I was scared someone else might grab it. I love pumpkin pie. This is a traditional dessert in my childhood. My mother would bake pumpkin pie and serve it with cranberries on top and then whipped cream on top of that. So you had like the warm pumpkin pie with that cutting through cranberry and the whipped cream. Pretty blissful. So if I see a vegan pumpkin pie, there's no question, I'm going for it. And then later, the next day, I offered someone a piece of this pumpkin pie, and she said, "Ugh, I hate pumpkin pie." I don't know what her trauma was around pumpkin pie, but we had completely different neurological tracks laid down in our brains regarding pumpkin pie. And to be totally honest, as I laid into that first piece of pumpkin pie, it wasn't that great. It was too sweet. The crust tasted kind of dead to me. But nonetheless, stimulus response. What happens in the brain? So I'm just going to run through this because I find it to be very, very interesting. What actually happens in your brain when you experience something? The first is perception and detection. So there's light, sound, touch, smell, taste, and there's this transmission, neurological transmission of information to the brain. What happens in the brain is then it moves into processing and interpretation. This is your central nervous system. The thalamus is the relay system for processing. The cerebral cortex processes the stimulus to give it meaning. The visual cortex does the visual stuff, the auditory does the sound, other associated areas, and it moves immediately into emotional and evaluative response. The amygdala there is to assess if it's a threat, and if there's any emotional response needed, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And then there's the prefrontal cortex, which is sort of moderating the amygdala. It's the rational decision-making, kind of thoughtful process, like, okay, have we seen this before? Then you have activation of the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic increases your heart rate, releases adrenaline, diverts blood flow to the muscles, and then the parasympathetic, which engages to calm the body when the threat is over. Then you have a motor response. The motor cortex signals the appropriate motor neurons to execute a physical response, and then the reflex actions are the immediate response to the stimuli, all happening kind of in the spinal cord. And then you've got the motor response with the voluntary actions. It's more deliberate. It's kind of higher brain functioning. How do I physically respond to this? Then when you respond to it, you've got the whole process of feedback and regulation. There's a sensory feedback that occurs, and then there's sort of the homeostasis, the body adjusting to return to baseline after the stimulus. And then the hormones, cortisol levels, whether they go up and down, heart rate and breathing return to normal. And then it steps into memory and learning. The hippocampus stores the experience for future reference. If it was significant, it might encode it strongly for survival. And then there's plasticity. The nervous system adapts based on that experience, potentially altering future responses to similar stimuli. All of this, this is the crazy part, perception and detection, processing and interpretation, emotional and evaluative response, activation of the autonomic nervous system, the motor response, the feedback and regulation, the memory and learning, all of it happens in milliseconds. In milliseconds, you react. And the question becomes, what if in that gap between stimulus and response, what would happen if you opened up that gap just a little bit? Just a little bit. And this is what the witness can provide. If you have access where you're not traumatized, and you can ask yourself, what exactly is happening right now? What's happening extrinsically outside me? What's happening intrinsically inside me? Well, can I be with it? How can I be with it? And this is the difference between reacting to life and responding to life. Big, big, big difference. So, a quick little story. As you know, I have been down with COVID and walking pneumonia for about a month. Low energy, lack of clarity, a little depressed. And as you know, I offer this weekly talk. And sometimes I'll do an archive talk, sometimes I do something fresh. But it takes a lot of hours every week. It takes some firepower to do it. And I try to think of each talk as if it was my last talk. I care about the quality. Even if I don't do a fresh talk, I'll find an old one, I'll do a fresh meditation, a fresh introduction. I edit it all, I upload it, I export the audio, port it to Facebook and all the other outlets. It takes time and energy. And so here I am, just really laid low. I have a talk to do. I have this talk to do. And so I just thought, well, what would happen if I just let it go? What would happen if I didn't do it? And immediately my mind said, oh, I can't not do a talk. And I thought, well, what if I actually gave myself permission? No talk this week. I feel a little bit of space. Like, ooh, wouldn't that be nice? And I thought, what if I let go of the end result? What if I let go of getting a talk that might be helpful to someone somewhere? And I just reflected on that question, and I thought, okay, just one less talk. There are already like 600 talks, if someone really wants to hear my dulcet healing tones pontificate on something. You're really not that important. And then I thought, well, what if I let go of the result, but I still did something? And I thought, well, let me just see what happens. And I started writing this talk. And honestly, I got into a pretty cool flow and kind of got excited about it. So it's an interesting thing to explore. We are reaction machines, or maybe I'll speak for myself. My mind is a reaction machine. I tend to catastrophize. How can I neutralize that? Is it possible to kind of neutralize my essential reactivity and tap into some new possibilities? I'm aware of limited time, and I'm aware that I think this would be a really cool meditation that would require a little more time than we have. So I'm going to make this a part 2. But it's an interesting thing just to reflect on. What do you have control over? And what do you not have control over? It turns out there's very little that we have control over. But we may have control over a few things. We may not have control over the extrinsic. We may not have control over the externals. But there's a possibility we have some control over the intrinsic, over the internals. As has been said, it's not what's happening in your life as much as it is paying attention to how you relate to it. And this is where these qualities that we've explored here come into play. Anytime you can shift from the mind to the experience of here and now, you are breaking some patterns of reactivity. Anytime you can ask yourself, can I feel my in-breath? How intimately can I feel the out-breath? Anytime you identify something you can hear, feel, taste, touch, smell, you have re-arrived. It's kind of magical. You've broken the reactive machinery of the mind. Anytime, and it's not all the time, it's sometimes, when you can ask yourself, what does it mean for me to take the seat of the witness right now? You can begin to sense this quality of non-judging awareness. One of my teachers was asked at the end of his life, what's the highest quality of a spiritual seeker? His response was not buckle down, it's not work harder, it's not whatever you're enjoying, stop it. His response was the highest quality of a spiritual seeker is self-observation without judgment. When you can sense the seat of the witness, you have moved from reaction into awareness itself. One of the resulting qualities in this practice is this quality of steadiness, the quality of equanimity. And when you can move into this place, you're moving from reacting to life to the possibility of responding to life. And there is a world of difference. I find myself at times arguing with reality. And I've noticed I lose every time. And the question becomes, is it possible to shift our attention in a way that we can cooperate with reality? Or as that phrase says, which is a little absurd, can I practice wholehearted, enthusiastic cooperation with reality? Clear seeing, really seeing what's true, and finding a way to open your heart to truth. That's what's possible in this practice. And it is a practice. One of the elements of practice is you fail all the time. And yet, at the same time, you can incrementally find yourself at times feeling more spacious, more alert, more aware. And as we are inevitably heading into some interesting times, challenging times, for me, and I'm going to talk about this more, it's so more important in my life that I plug into awareness. I plug into source more and more. So thank you for your time and attention. I hope you found this helpful. I'll explore more of a part 2, and we'll explore this kind of equanimity practice and then some strategies for bringing the heart-mind together in a way that can help us to surf the waves of uncertainty. Thank you so much, and so many blessings in your practice.